Have you ever noticed how some people talk about changing their lives for years, read all the books, watch every motivational video, even make vision boards, but when you really look at their life, nothing's different? Why is that? It's not because they don't want change. It's because they avoid the hard truths. The uncomfortable, unfiltered, hit you in the gut realities that actually set you free. Comfort feels safe, but it's the most dangerous trap of all. It's what the Stoics warned us about, the soft, seductive lie that keeps you small while pretending to protect you. Real growth doesn't happen when things feel easy. It happens when you choose to face life without the filters, without the excuses, without the illusions. The truth is, the life you want, the one where you feel strong, clear, grounded, that life begins the moment you stop avoiding the reality of where you are. So today, we're going to talk about 20 truths, not to shame you, not to break you, but to wake you up, because once you see these clearly, you can't go back, and that's a good thing. So if you're ready to stop pretending, to stop waiting, and start facing what actually sets you free, lean in. And if that kind of growth calls to something deeper in you, please subscribe. The path to clarity begins the moment you choose truth over comfort. That's the Stoic way. That's how you reclaim your life. 1. No one's coming to save you. You ever notice how easy it is to imagine that something or someone is going to show up and just fix everything? Like one day you'll wake up and the job will be better, your body will be stronger, your mind will be clearer, and somehow the storm inside you will just settle on its own. Maybe it'll be a mentor, a partner, the perfect opportunity, or some kind of cosmic sign that tells you it's finally time to change. We tell ourselves stories like that because, deep down, we want to believe we're not fully responsible for where we are. It's comforting to think that life owes us a rescue. But if you've lived long enough, you know how this movie ends. That person doesn't show up. That moment doesn't magically appear. And the truth hits harder than most people want to admit. No one is coming. There is no cavalry. There is no perfect moment. There's just you, your choices, your effort, your will. And yeah, I get it. That's a tough pill to swallow. We're conditioned from an early age to look outside of ourselves for direction. In school, you raise your hand and wait to be told what to do. At home, someone else usually fixes the mess. Even in entertainment, we're constantly fed the hero narrative, the chosen one who's saved by fate or helped by someone wiser, stronger, more powerful. But real life is what the Stoics prepared for. It's what Marcus Aurelius was journaling about at night while running an empire. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's not just ancient wisdom. It's the key to personal freedom. The power isn't out there in someone else's hands, it's in yours. But here's where most people stay stuck. They confuse responsibility with blame. They think if they accept that no one's coming to save them, it means they're to blame for every mess, every failure, every wound. That's not the point. The point is empowerment. It's about understanding that while you may not be at fault for everything that's happened to you, you are responsible for what happens next. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." That's where the shift begins. Not in waiting for life to be fair, but in choosing to move anyway. Think about the people you admire, not the ones with fancy titles or social media fame, but the ones who carry a kind of quiet strength. The single parent who works 2 jobs and still shows up for their kids. The person who fought their way out of addiction. The one who turned heartbreak into a creative fire. They didn't get there because someone handed them a roadmap. They got there because they stopped waiting and started building. Brick by brick, one hard day at a time. The Stoics called this the obstacle is the way. Whatever stands in your path isn't there to stop you. It is the path. You're not meant to avoid it. You're meant to go through it. That thing you keep putting off because it's hard or uncomfortable, that's exactly where your growth lives. You don't become resilient by avoiding struggle. You become resilient by facing it, by pushing through the resistance and realizing that you're stronger than you think. Here's something uncomfortable but liberating. The gap between who you are and who you want to be is built on choices. Not feelings, not luck, not timing. Choices. Every time you choose to act instead of waiting for motivation. Every time you show up even though no one's clapping. Every time you take responsibility for your own healing, even when it wasn't your fault. That's where you start building a life you don't need rescuing from. It's not glamorous, it's not always Instagrammable, but it's real, and it works. I'm not saying you can't ask for help, or that you need to do everything on your own, in some stoic, stubborn isolation, but there's a difference between asking for support and waiting to be saved. One is an act of courage, the other is passive surrender. Epictetus put it like this: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You can be in the middle of chaos and still choose your response. You can feel lost and still take one small step forward. Here's the other thing. When you finally accept that no one is coming, you stop wasting time hoping. You stop putting your power in other people's hands. You stop waiting for the right mood, the perfect partner, or the ideal circumstances. You stop waiting for your boss to notice your worth, or your family to validate your choices, or your anxiety to magically disappear. You take your life back. You do the uncomfortable thing. You take the risk. You build the thing. You say what needs to be said. You become the person you were hoping would save you. There's a kind of peace that comes when you stop outsourcing your life, when you finally see that the weight you've been carrying isn't going to vanish, but you've got the legs to carry it. When you stop looking for a lifeboat and realize you've had oars this whole time, that's where confidence begins. Not in perfection, not in having it all figured out, but in movement, in showing up for your life like it actually matters. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Your why doesn't need to be grand, it just needs to be real. Maybe you want to break a generational cycle. Maybe you want to prove to yourself that you can live without the mask. Maybe you just want to wake up one morning and not feel like your life is slipping through your fingers. Whatever it is, make that your reason. Then show up like it counts, because it does. 2. Life responds to action, not emotion. We all have those nights where everything feels too heavy. You lie in bed, thoughts racing, heart pounding, and emotions flooding through your body like a storm you can't control. You feel exhausted, defeated, maybe even hopeless. And you know what? That pain is valid. Those feelings are real. But here's the thing, most people don't want to admit. Life doesn't care how emotional you get. It doesn't shift just because you're overwhelmed. You can cry, scream, vent to your friends, or write pages in your journal. But at the end of the day, your life responds to one thing: action. That sounds cold, I know. But in a way, it's liberating. Because while you can't always control how you feel, you can control what you do next. It's easy to get stuck in the mindset that feelings must come first, that you need to feel motivated before you go to the gym, or inspired before you write that article, or confident before you speak your truth. But if you wait for the right feeling to show up, you'll wait forever. The Stoics understood this better than most. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." In other words, stop overthinking, stop waiting, just act. That one sentence holds more truth than 100 self-help videos, because what separates people who grow from people who stay stuck isn't their mood, it's their movement. Look around. Think about the most resilient people you know, the ones who push forward even when things get messy. They're not powered by some endless reserve of positivity or perfect conditions. They're powered by discipline. They understand that life isn't moved by emotion, it's moved by effort. You can feel like crap and still go for a walk. You can feel unworthy and still apply for the job. You can feel scared and still have that hard conversation. Feelings are real, yes, but they're not facts. And they're definitely not reliable decision makers. Psychologist Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." That cuts deep, doesn't it? Because most of us say we want change. We say we want to be healthier, happier, more fulfilled. But when it's time to show up, to take the uncomfortable step, that's when we freeze. That's when we start negotiating with ourselves. Maybe tomorrow, maybe when I feel better. But guess what? That version of you, the one with the better mindset, more clarity, more energy, they only show up after you start acting, not before. The modern world has taught us to over-identify with our emotions. We've been conditioned to think that how we feel is who we are. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. It says, observe your emotions, but don't obey them. Epictetus put it like this: it's not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. Meaning, your reaction is what shapes your reality, not the thing itself. That's power, that's self-mastery. And you don't need a perfect day to practice it. You just need to start where you are, with what you've got. Now let's be real. Acting through discomfort doesn't feel good at first. It feels awkward, even painful. You'll feel resistance. Your brain will throw every excuse at you. I'm tired. I'm not ready. I don't have time. But that's exactly why action matters more in those moments. Because every time you move despite discomfort, you teach your mind a new lesson, that you're capable even when you don't feel like it. And that's where confidence comes from, not from hype, not from affirmations, but from proof. Here's a truth that'll sting. Life doesn't reward what you feel. It rewards what you repeat. You could feel passionate about a dream for years, but if you never act on it, it fades. You could feel guilty about neglecting your health, but if you don't change your habits, nothing shifts. Life listens to what you do. And yes, that's a challenge, but it's also a relief. Because it means you're not at the mercy of your emotions. You're not trapped in whatever mood hits you in the morning. You have something better than motivation. You have a will. Friedrich Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Your why is your anchor when your emotions start trying to drag you off course. You don't need to be in the mood. You need to be on mission. When you're clear on your values, on what kind of life you're trying to build, then you stop needing every day to feel perfect. You just show up. And the more you show up, the easier it gets. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. It's like working out. The first few times are brutal. Your body hurts. Your mind screams. Everything in you wants to quit. But if you keep going, something shifts. You start to feel stronger, not just physically, but mentally. You realize you can do hard things. That's what discipline builds. And that's what Stoicism trains you for. Not a life without pain, but a life where you respond to pain with purpose. Where you stop waiting for better feelings and start creating a better rhythm. So let's bring it back. Ask yourself this: where in your life are you waiting for a feeling instead of making a move? Are you waiting to feel motivated before you change your habits? Waiting to feel confident before you speak up? Waiting to feel ready before you chase the thing you keep dreaming about? What would shift if you stopped waiting? What would change if you acted as if your future depended on what you did today? Because it does. The harsh truth is, you don't rise by riding emotional waves. You rise by rowing, even when the sea is rough. And no, that's not easy. But it's simple. Move your feet, make the call, drink the water, do the reps, write the page, take the first step, and then the next. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done. Action may not always bring happiness, but there is no happiness without action. You can feel lost and still move. You can feel sad and still serve. You can feel scared and still show up. That's what makes a life. Not what you feel, but what you build. So build it. One imperfect, defiant, courageous step at a time. 3. You're not tired, you're scattered. You ever get to the end of the day and feel completely wiped out? But when you look back, you can't even remember what you actually did. Like you were busy, sure, but nothing meaningful got done. You convinced yourself you were being productive, but deep down, you know you were just busy. That kind of fatigue is real, but it's not the same as true exhaustion. What you're feeling isn't burnout from effort, it's burnout from fragmentation. Your mind is being pulled in 100 directions all day long, and it's no wonder you're tired. But it's not your body that's exhausted, it's your focus that's starved. We live in an attention economy. Every app, every notification, every algorithm is designed to hijack your brain, to pull you out of presence and into a state of constant reaction. And when you live like that long enough, you start to confuse stimulation with activity. But being stimulated isn't the same thing as being alive. Constant noise doesn't equal progress. The Stoics would have seen right through this modern mess. Seneca wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." That hits, doesn't it? Because that's exactly what distraction fatigue feels like. You're nowhere, mentally, scattered, foggy, disconnected from your own life. And here's the trap. When we feel this way, we often think the answer is more rest, more naps, more me time. But rest isn't the solution if your mind is constantly consuming junk. You don't fix mental overload with more scrolling. You fix it with intentional focus. Try this. Choose one thing that actually matters, just one, and give it your full, undivided attention. No phone, no tabs open, no distractions, just you and the task. It could be something simple, writing a page, having a real conversation, going for a walk without your headphones. And watch what happens. You'll feel energized, not depleted, clear, not overwhelmed. That's the power of presence. And it doesn't come from external noise, it comes from you deciding to reclaim your mind. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's what distraction does. It becomes the invisible force running your life without you realizing it. You think you're choosing what to do with your time, but really, your habits are choosing for you. You wake up and grab your phone before your feet hit the floor. You check messages while brushing your teeth. You answer emails while eating breakfast. By the time you sit down to actually start your day, your attention is already drained. And then you wonder why you can't concentrate, why you feel stuck, why everything feels harder than it should. The Stoics practiced something called mental discipline, not in a controlling or obsessive way, but in a conscious, deliberate one. They believed in training the mind like a muscle. And let's be real, most people today are mentally flabby. We've trained ourselves to switch tasks every few seconds, to avoid boredom like it's the plague. But boredom is where clarity begins. It's the empty space where your real thoughts live. The uncomfortable silence where insight waits to emerge. But you can't hear it over the constant buzz of distraction. You've got to unplug to reconnect. And no, this isn't about becoming a monk or moving off the grid. It's about understanding that your focus is a resource, and like any resource, it can run out. The more you waste it on things that don't matter, the less you have for the things that do. We think productivity is about doing more, but often it's about doing less, on purpose. Let me give it to you straight. Most of your fatigue isn't physical, it's spiritual. It's the ache that comes from living out of alignment with your priorities. You feel exhausted, not because you've been working hard on meaningful things, but because you've been leaking energy all day on meaningless ones. You've been giving your attention to people who don't deserve it, apps that don't serve you, and conversations that drain you. And the worst part? You probably don't even notice anymore. It's just normal. But normal is what's making you tired. So what's the fix? It's not sexy, it's not instant, but it's powerful. Simplify, cut the noise, choose fewer things, and do them with more presence. Build boundaries around your attention like it's sacred, because it is. Design your environment to support focus, not sabotage it. Turn off the notifications. Delete the apps that pull you into the void. Set time aside every day to just be with your thoughts. Yes, it'll feel weird at first, maybe even uncomfortable. But that discomfort is just withdrawal from mental junk food. Let it pass. You're building something better. Your attention isn't a passive experience. It's a choice. And when you start choosing where to place it, how to direct it, who gets access to it, you start getting your life back. You start feeling more grounded, more energized, more you. That's not productivity, that's alignment. 4. Time is the only real currency. You ever catch yourself saying, "Where did the day go?" Or worse, "Where did the last 5 years go?" It's wild how time slips through your fingers without you even noticing. One minute you're setting goals and dreaming big, and the next you're looking back, wondering how so much time passed without real progress. The truth is, we act like time is this unlimited resource, something we can burn, waste, or trade cheaply, like it'll always be there tomorrow. But it's not. It's the one thing you can't get back. You can rebuild your finances. You can reclaim your health. You can even repair broken relationships. But time is a one-way ticket. Once it's gone, it's gone. And yet, we treat it like it's disposable. We give away our mornings to mindless scrolling, our afternoons to pointless drama, and our evenings to empty distractions. We say yes to things we don't care about, spend hours with people who drain us, and let days pass without doing anything that truly moves us forward. If someone handed you $1,000 every morning and said, "Spend this however you want, but you don't get to keep what you don't use wisely," you'd probably think hard about where it goes. But when life gives you 86,400 seconds every day, most people don't even blink before handing it over to nonsense. The Stoics were obsessed with this. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He didn't say this as poetry. He meant it as a warning. We don't need longer lives. We need sharper ones, more intentional, more deliberate. The problem isn't time, it's how we treat it. Most of us aren't out of time. We're just living like it doesn't matter. And here's the brutal truth. If you don't start valuing your time, someone else will use it for their agenda. Every quick favor, every just 5 minutes, every mindless distraction, you're trading life for that, bit by bit. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." That quote isn't just about parenting, it's about potential. It's about what happens when people spend so much of their life postponing the things that matter, waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. And that burden, it gets passed down, recycled, repeated. You weren't born to exist in the margins of your own life. But if you don't claim your time, your attention, your purpose, someone else will. Think about what time really is. It's your life in motion. It's not just numbers on a clock or days on a calendar. Every second is a choice, a vote, a brushstroke on the painting that is your life. And the picture you're creating depends on what you prioritize. If you spend most of your time reacting to life instead of designing it, you'll end up somewhere you never intended. That's not fate. That's the result of small, unconscious choices made every single day. But here's the good news. You don't need to overhaul your entire schedule overnight. You just need to become more intentional. 1 hour reclaimed today is a seed for a completely different life next year. One boundary set this week creates space for focus, for creativity, for you. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters. Quality beats quantity every time. Think about how different your days would feel if even just 30 minutes were spent in deep focus, meaningful work, real connection, or even silence. That's not a time issue. That's a clarity issue. The Stoics talked a lot about living according to nature. That doesn't mean hugging trees. It means understanding what's essential to a well-lived life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." That's not morbid. That's motivation. It's a reminder to cut through the noise and stop pretending that we have forever. You don't. I don't. None of us do. And when you really sit with that, not in fear but in focus, it changes everything. You stop chasing validation. You stop tolerating mediocrity. You stop wasting time trying to please everyone. You get serious about what matters. You also get more honest. Because if you're really honest, a lot of the time you say you don't have time. What you mean is, it's not a priority. And that's okay. But own it. Don't lie to yourself about how busy you are while you're binging a show you've already seen twice. Don't complain that your dream is out of reach if you're not giving it even 20 minutes a day. Time reveals your real values, not the ones you say, but the ones you live. And that can either be a wake-up call or a turning point. You don't need to be perfect with your time. You just need to be awake, conscious, present. Build a schedule that reflects who you want to become, not just what's urgent. Stop glorifying busyness. Being overwhelmed isn't a badge of honor. It's usually a sign of poor boundaries. Protect your mornings. Guard your evenings. Carve out time for stillness, for growth, for building the life you actually want, not just surviving the one you've fallen into. Here's something else most people don't talk about. Time feels different depending on how you use it. 10 minutes of scrolling feels like nothing. 10 minutes of deep reflection, of movement, of connection. It stretches. It fills you. It leaves a mark. Your brain doesn't remember time. It remembers meaning. That's why some days feel like a blur and others feel like a chapter in your story. If you want time to slow down, fill it with what matters. So ask yourself, what have I been treating as urgent that really isn't? What have I been calling too busy to do that actually aligns with my values? And what would shift if I started protecting my time like my life depends on it? Because it does. Look, you don't owe your time to everyone who asks for it. You don't need to explain every no. You don't need to feel guilty for choosing solitude over social noise. This isn't about isolation, it's about intention. You're not here to live a default life. You're here to live a designed one. And that starts with time, with honoring it, with spending it like the sacred, non-refundable currency that it is. Because once it's gone, it's gone. And the only thing more painful than wasted time is realizing you were the one who gave it away. 5. Growth feels like discomfort. You ever notice how much of our lives are built around avoiding discomfort? Like, without even realizing it, we organize our days to stay cozy. We hit snooze instead of getting up early. We scroll instead of sitting with our thoughts. We nod along instead of speaking the truth. It's subtle, it's sneaky, but over time, it adds up. What feels like peace is actually just avoidance wearing a disguise. And here's the hard truth. You can either be comfortable or you can grow, but not both at the same time. Real growth, the kind that actually changes your life, is uncomfortable by design. It stretches you, it demands something from you. And yeah, sometimes it hurts. Discomfort shows up wearing a lot of different outfits. It's the tension before an honest conversation. It's the awkwardness of trying something new and not being good at it yet. It's the fatigue after choosing discipline instead of distraction. And we resist it because everything in our brain says, "Run, this feels bad." But that's just a survival instinct that hasn't caught up to modern life. Back when discomfort meant danger, like a predator or freezing cold, that reaction made sense. But now discomfort usually means growth is knocking. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said, "Difficulties are things that show a person what they are." They believed adversity was not something to escape, but something to engage. Because when life challenges you, it's not trying to break you, it's trying to reveal you. Think about a time you really changed, a time you became stronger, wiser, more grounded. It didn't happen during a vacation or a lazy Sunday afternoon. It happened after a breakup, a job loss, a health scare, a moment where you were forced to look in the mirror and make a choice. That's what discomfort does. It shakes you out of autopilot. It burns away the excuses. It puts you in direct contact with what you actually value. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. That's not a punishment. That's the cost of waking up." We live in a world that worships ease, faster food, quicker results, shortcuts to success. But shortcuts come with a hidden toll. They keep you soft. They rob you of resilience. And the thing is, discomfort isn't just a sign that growth is happening. It's the mechanism of growth itself. Like lifting weights at the gym, it tears you down so you can build back stronger. The pain of effort isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're doing something real, whether it's getting up early to pursue a goal, sitting in silence with your own thoughts, or finally telling someone the truth. You grow when you lean into the hard stuff, not when you escape it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That line has changed lives because it reframes discomfort from obstacle to opportunity. It tells you that thing you're avoiding, that's the path, not the distraction next to it, not the shortcut around it, the thing itself, that hard decision, that honest conversation, that scary leap. That's the way forward. It's never behind comfort. It's always through discomfort. Here's the thing. Every time you avoid discomfort, you reinforce the idea that you're not capable of handling it. You train your brain to believe, "I can't do hard things." And slowly, your confidence shrinks. Your world shrinks. And you start organizing your entire life around not feeling discomfort. But on the flip side, every time you choose discomfort, you get a little stronger. Every early morning, every difficult choice, every moment of truth-telling, it rewires your brain. It says, "See, I can handle this." And that's where real confidence comes from, not from talking about change, from walking through it. This doesn't mean chasing pain for the sake of it. You don't need to suffer just to prove something. It means understanding that growth has a price. And that price is usually some form of short-term discomfort. The problem is, most people want long-term growth without the short-term struggle. But it doesn't work like that. You want the strength? Then you've got to pick up the weight. You want the peace? Then you've got to walk through the chaos. You want the freedom? Then you've got to face what's been holding you back. Simple, not easy. The truth is, the life you want is already waiting for you, but it's on the other side of discomfort. It's not hiding in the easy path. It's hiding in the places you keep avoiding. The email you won't write, the project you haven't started, the boundary you haven't set. That's the work. So here's the challenge. Don't run from the burn. Don't flinch at the friction. Let discomfort be your compass. When you feel resistance, pay attention. Because resistance usually means you're heading towards something important, something meaningful, something that will change you. Ask yourself, what am I avoiding right now because it feels uncomfortable? What growth have I been postponing because the process doesn't feel good? And what might happen, what could happen, if I stopped waiting for it to feel easy and started moving anyway? Discomfort is not your enemy, it's your teacher. And if you can learn to lean into it, not all at once, but in small, brave ways, you'll start to see change where it matters most. Not just in your circumstances, but in you, because that's what this is really about. Becoming the kind of person who doesn't just survive the hard things, but chooses them, not because they're fun, but because they're worth it. Because you are. 6. You will outgrow people. Ever feel like certain people, places, or routines that once felt like home now feel off? Like the group chat you used to love is suddenly full of conversations that drain you, or the habits that once brought comfort now feel like anchors holding you back. At first, you might wonder what changed. You might even feel a little guilty for pulling away, for wanting something different, something deeper. But here's what you need to know. It's not betrayal, it's growth. What once fit the older version of you might not fit the person you're becoming. And that's okay. That's not personal, it's evolution. Growth doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it's a quiet discomfort, a restlessness, a craving for more meaning, more depth, more truth. And the hard part, that evolution often asks you to let go of things that once felt safe. Friends who meant well but no longer align with your values. Environments that used to feel exciting but now feel small. Habits that used to help you survive but now stop you from thriving. It's tempting to cling, to keep playing a role in a story that no longer inspires you. But if you're constantly editing yourself just to stay where you've always been, you'll never discover who you're really meant to be. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change." Life, by its very nature, is a process of constant transformation. You are not who you were 5 years ago, and that's a good thing. You're supposed to evolve. And sometimes, evolution looks like drifting away from people who no longer see you, not because you're better than them, not because they're wrong, but because your growth demands a different rhythm, a different kind of space, a new level of self-respect. It's easy to feel guilty for outgrowing people, especially when there's history, love, and shared memories involved. But here's something important. Growth doesn't erase love. It doesn't cancel gratitude. You can appreciate what someone gave you and still recognize that the connection no longer supports your highest self. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and becoming who you truly are will sometimes mean walking away from roles you used to play, from versions of yourself that were necessary back then, but limiting now." People will call it selfish. People will try to guilt you into shrinking. But what they don't see is that true loyalty isn't about staying stuck together. It's about supporting each other's evolution. If someone truly values you, they won't ask you to stay small to keep them comfortable. And if they're really meant for your journey, they'll grow too. They'll rise with you, or they'll at least respect your path, even if they're not walking it. Think of it like this. When a snake grows, it sheds its skin. Not because it hates the old one, but because it can't expand within it. That's what growth is. It's not a rejection of your past, it's an honoring of your future. And if you keep trying to squeeze yourself into spaces you've outgrown, all you do is delay your potential. You water yourself down, you dim your light. And over time, you start to feel stuck, resentful, maybe even ashamed for wanting more. But you shouldn't be ashamed of that. In fact, it's something to celebrate. Because that desire to evolve, that hunger for depth and meaning, is proof that something inside you is waking up. You're not meant to live in loops. You're meant to expand. And expansion requires release. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step away, not out of anger, not out of superiority, but out of respect for your own becoming. Seneca said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." That doesn't mean abandoning people when they're down. It means being mindful of the energy you allow into your life. It means noticing how you feel after spending time with someone. Drained? Small? Like you have to pretend? Or do you feel inspired, challenged, seen? Your environment is either helping you grow or keeping you stuck. And you owe it to your future self to choose wisely. Letting go doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's just creating space, not replying right away, declining an invitation, spending more time alone, getting reacquainted with your own rhythm. It's not about being cold, it's about being clear. Clear on what you need, clear on what you're building, clear on the kind of life that aligns with your deepest values. And yes, it will be uncomfortable. Growth always is. You'll question yourself. You'll miss the comfort of familiarity. You'll grieve the version of yourself that no longer fits. But if you push through that discomfort, something beautiful happens. You make space for new energy, new relationships, new habits, things that match your current frequency, not your past identity. Friedrich Nietzsche said, "The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die." That's not about physical death, it's about spiritual stagnation. If you're not shedding the old, you're suffocating the new. You can't hold on to every piece of your past and still step fully into your future. That's not how transformation works. It demands honesty. It demands courage. And yes, it demands loss. But not all loss is bad. Some loss is necessary. Some loss is sacred. So if you're feeling the pull to change, follow it, even if it's messy, even if it means you walk alone for a while. Because solitude isn't emptiness. It's a space of recalibration, a time to listen to what your soul actually wants. And when you come out the other side, you'll find that the right people, the right places, the right habits, they start finding you. Not because you chased them, but because you finally made room for them to enter. Remember, this is your life, not a dress rehearsal, not a group project, not a loyalty test to people who liked the older, quieter, smaller version of you. This is your one shot to become who you were meant to be. Don't waste it clinging to comfort. Don't shrink to fit the expectations of people who are afraid to grow. You're not abandoning anyone, you're returning to yourself. And if they're truly meant for your journey, they'll meet you at your next level. Not because you dragged them there, but because you inspired them to rise. 7. Weak boundaries equal chaotic life. It's funny how often we talk about wanting peace, like it's some magical thing we might stumble across if we just go on the right vacation, or listen to the right playlist, or meditate for long enough. But let's be real, peace isn't something you find lying around. It's not hiding in a beach resort or the bottom of a journal page. Peace is something you build, and like anything worth building, it takes effort, clarity, and structure. The structure? That's boundaries. Strong, clear, sometimes uncomfortable boundaries, the kind that don't always make you popular, but absolutely make you powerful. Because without boundaries, your life becomes open terrain. Anyone can walk in with their drama, their urgency, their negativity, and leave it at your doorstep. And the worst part, if you're not careful, you'll start to think that's normal. You'll confuse being constantly available with being kind. You'll mistake self-abandonment for compassion, and before you know it, you're drained, not from what you're doing, but from what you're allowing. The Stoics had a very different view of peace than we do today. It wasn't about comfort or escape. It was about alignment, living in harmony with what you can control and releasing everything you can't. Epictetus said it best: keep your will in harmony with nature. What he meant was, stop trying to fix everything around you and start protecting what's within you. And one of the most effective ways to do that: boundaries. But boundaries aren't just about saying no to others. They're about saying yes to yourself, yes to your priorities, yes to your rest, yes to your peace. They're not walls, they're filters. They don't shut people out, they let the right energy in. Boundaries don't mean you're harsh, they mean you're honest. And they don't make you selfish, they make you self-aware. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." That includes accepting your limits, your capacity, the fact that you cannot be everything for everyone, and trying to be is what steals your joy. You weren't made to carry the emotional weight of every person around you. You weren't made to absorb their moods, solve their problems, or constantly explain yourself to people who aren't even listening. You were made to live with clarity, to honor your energy like it's sacred, because it is. But here's what they don't tell you. Setting boundaries will make people uncomfortable, especially the ones who benefited from you not having any. People will push back, they'll question you. Some might even try to guilt-trip you with phrases like, "You've changed," or "You're being difficult." But listen closely. Those are often just signs that your boundaries are working, that you're finally disrupting patterns that never served you in the first place. Living without boundaries is like handing out keys to your house and hoping people won't walk in whenever they feel like it. But the truth is, if you don't define your space, someone else will. And they won't do it with your best interests in mind. Let's get practical. Start small. Think of one area in your life where you consistently feel depleted. A relationship, a work dynamic, a habit of overcommitting. Ask yourself, what's one boundary I've been afraid to set here? Then set it. Clearly, kindly, firmly. No need to over-explain. No need to apologize. I won't be able to make it. I need some space. That doesn't work for me. That's enough. Full sentences. Full stop. And don't just set boundaries with other people, set them with yourself. Protect your own peace from your own patterns. Limit the time you spend scrolling. Say no to the impulse to please everyone. Create space in your day that belongs to no one but you. That's where peace grows. In those quiet moments where you get to hear your own thoughts instead of the world's noise. Peace isn't passive. It's not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of clarity, and clarity requires decisions. Who gets your time? Who earns access to your energy? What behaviors are you no longer willing to tolerate, even from yourself? These aren't just questions. They're tools. The blueprints of a life that feels grounded instead of chaotic. Not every email needs a reply. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every invitation requires a yes. Your life is not a community garden. It's a carefully curated space. And the more you protect it, the more peace you'll start to feel. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Yes, you might lose some people along the way, but that's okay. People who can't respect your boundaries were never really respecting you. They were respecting your compliance. And losing that kind of energy isn't loss, it's liberation. So the next time you catch yourself overwhelmed, ask, where did I let my boundaries slip? The next time you feel resentful, ask, what am I saying yes to that I really mean no to? Because those emotions, they're not just signals, they're maps. They're showing you where your peace is leaking. Follow them back, plug the holes, take your space, speak your truth. Because at the end of the day, no one's coming to protect your peace for you. That job belongs to you. And when you start taking it seriously, everything shifts. The noise gets quieter, the air gets lighter, and your life starts to feel more like yours. 8. You are what you do. Daily. Ever wonder why you feel stuck, even though you have all these big dreams and ambitious goals? You write them down, talk about them, even daydream about them on your commute. And yet, not much changes. That disconnect between what you want and what you do, that's where the gap lives. The truth is, you're not becoming the person you hope to be. You're becoming the person your habits are shaping. That's the part most people don't want to hear. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Your identity isn't something you wish into existence. It's something you practice. And that practice, it lives in the tiny, almost invisible actions you take each day. It's the choice to wake up when your alarm goes off instead of hitting snooze. It's the decision to go for that walk, write one page, or say no to something that doesn't serve you. It's not about grand gestures, it's about consistency. That's what discipline really is, not willpower, not motivation. Just showing up again and again, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. We often lie to ourselves with good intentions. We say things like, I'll start next week, or once I'm less busy, I'll get serious. You say you want peace, but you scroll yourself into anxiety. You say you want clarity, but you fill every quiet moment with noise. You say you want growth, but you avoid discomfort like the plague. Those aren't just random choices, they're shaping your future self. Every small decision you make is a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. Skipping the gym once doesn't make you unfit, but skipping it 5 times a week, then convincing yourself you'll get back on track Monday, that becomes your identity. Likewise, reading one page of a book, writing one sentence, showing up for 5 minutes of focused work, those small wins don't look like much in the moment, but over time they compound. That's the real magic. Your habits aren't just routines, they're the architecture of your life. And yet, so many people chase hacks and shortcuts instead of building systems. They want to feel motivated before they act. But motivation is unreliable. It's like waiting for perfect weather before you leave the house. You don't need motivation. You need a standard, a decision made in advance. This is what I do, no matter what mood I'm in. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's not philosophy, that's instruction. Decide who you want to become, and then start acting like it. But let's get honest for a second. Discipline is uncomfortable. It's not glamorous. It's often boring. It requires delayed gratification, which is the opposite of what the modern world trains us for. Everything around you is designed to make you impulsive. Social media wants you to scroll endlessly. Food delivery apps want you to order instead of cook. Streaming platforms want you to binge instead of build. But here's the hard truth. If you don't control your habits will control you. And they'll lead you somewhere, but maybe not where you want to go. So how do you turn this around? Start by making and keeping small promises to yourself. That's where real self-respect begins. You don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. That's not sustainable. What is sustainable is building tiny wins. Wake up and drink a glass of water. Set a 10-minute timer and write. Walk for 15 minutes. Meditate for 5. These little things sound insignificant, but they teach your brain something critical. I follow through. And that belief, that's where confidence comes from. Most people think confidence is built through praise or achievement, but it's not. Confidence is built by watching yourself do hard things, by proving to yourself that you're reliable, that when you say you're going to do something, you actually do it. Over time, those small actions become part of your identity, and once your identity shifts, your behavior follows without as much friction. You don't have to fight yourself every day. You simply become the kind of person who does the thing. Every habit you repeat is carving a groove into your life. And if you're not intentional, those grooves become trenches, and you wake up years from now wondering how you got so far from the life you actually wanted. So here's a moment of truth. Take a look at your last week. Not what you hoped to do, what you actually did. Where did your time go? What did you prioritize? Who did you become in those hours? And then ask yourself, if I keep repeating this same pattern for the next year, what kind of person will I become? You don't need perfection, you just need direction. And then you need repetition, over and over, small steps, imperfect progress, real discipline, because your future isn't built in some big moment of inspiration. It's built in the tiny, seemingly unimportant decisions you make every single day. Want to know who you're becoming? Don't check your dreams, check your habits, because they're already writing the next chapter of your life, one repetition at a time. 9. Most people don't care. Ever walk into a room and feel like everyone's staring at you? Like every move you make is being silently judged, every flaw magnified, every awkward moment on replay in someone else's mind. It's such a common feeling, and yet, here's the truth. Most people aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are, not because they don't care, but because they're busy thinking about themselves, about how they're being perceived, what they said, what they wore, how they came off. The spotlight you think is on you, it's on them too. There's actually a name for this in psychology, the spotlight effect. It's the tendency to believe that others notice us more than they actually do. And once you understand this, it's incredibly freeing. That thing you said last week that you've been cringing about ever since? Forgotten. That slightly weird comment you made in the meeting? Gone. Most people aren't cataloging your mistakes. They're not keeping score. They're just trying to survive their own day. Think about how much time people waste replaying social interactions, overanalyzing texts, or rehearsing what they should have said. All because we assume someone's watching, someone's judging. But what if they're not? What if the judgment you're afraid of is imaginary? And what if living under that illusion is costing you joy, freedom, opportunity? The reality is, people are busy with their jobs, their relationships, their own insecurities. Most of the time, people aren't thinking about you at all. Not in a rude way, just in a human way. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And man, isn't that the truth? We suffer more from what might be thought than what actually is thought. We shrink ourselves, not because someone told us to, but because we imagined someone would. We tone ourselves down, play small, stay silent, not because it's required, but because we've convinced ourselves it's safer. But safe isn't always sane, and it's definitely not fulfilling. What's the cost of trying to be invisible, of trying to fit in, smooth the edges, avoid judgment? You lose you, the real you, the loud laugh, the weird hobby, the bold dream, the part of you that doesn't want to ask for permission. That part, it dies a little every time you prioritize someone else's comfort over your truth. And here's the irony. When you stop trying to be what people expect and start being fully yourself, people actually respect you more. Authenticity is magnetic, not perfection, not performance, just realness. The courage to be seen, flaws and all. The confidence to say, this is me, take it or leave it. And yeah, some people will leave it. That's fine. Not everyone's meant for your path, but the ones who do stay, they'll see you, not the mask, not the performance, you. This doesn't mean being reckless or inconsiderate. It means being honest. It means understanding that your value isn't tied to how well you fit into other people's expectations. You're not here to be palatable. You're here to be true. There's a difference between humility and self-erasure, between being respectful and being afraid. And it's time to stop letting fear of judgment hold the steering wheel of your life. Look back on your life. Think about the moments you regret the most. I'd bet most of them aren't times you were too bold, but times you held back, when you didn't say how you felt, when you didn't take the risk, when you didn't show up as yourself. That's the real heartbreak. Not failure, but absence. Not rejection, but the opportunity you never gave yourself. So next time you feel that self-conscious tension rising, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, who am I afraid of disappointing? Whose opinion am I prioritizing over my own truth? And what would happen if I just let go? If I trusted that I don't have to be perfect, I just have to be me. The Stoics would say, live according to nature, your nature, not someone else's projection, not society's mold, yours. That includes your voice, your quirks, your passions, your presence, all of it. You want to feel free? You want to feel peace? Start here. Stop performing for an audience that isn't even watching, and start living for the person who has to sit with your choices every night. You. Live boldly, speak freely, laugh loudly. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. That's how you build a life that actually feels like yours. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. 10. You become what you consume. Ever notice how some days you just feel off, and you can't quite explain why? Nothing huge happened, no big drama, no real problem. But you feel anxious, scattered, maybe even a little drained. And if you look closer, it's usually not what happened to you. It's what you've been exposing yourself to, what you've been feeding your mind. Because the truth is, your thoughts don't come out of nowhere. They grow from what you plant. And your mind, it's not a machine, it's a sponge. Whatever you soak it in, that's what it becomes. If you surround yourself with constant noise, drama, comparison, and chaos, don't be surprised when your thoughts start echoing that same mess. You scroll through social media, bounce between opinions, headlines, gossip, and then you wonder why you feel distracted and low-level stressed all the time. But this isn't just about distraction, it's about direction. Every input you allow into your mind is shaping your focus, your energy, your identity. That's not a metaphor, that's psychology. You are what you consume. Because what you consume influences what you think. And what you think, that determines what you do. So if your thoughts are full of fear, resentment, comparison, or defeat, take a good look at the content you've been surrounding yourself with, because your inner world is just reflecting your mental diet. The Stoics were way ahead of their time with this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Think about that. Dyed, soaked in, just like a sponge. The more negativity you absorb, the more it stains your perception, until you can't tell the difference between the noise around you and the voice inside you. But the opposite is also true. When you feed your mind with clarity, wisdom, stillness, you start to reflect those qualities in everything you do. It's not just about reading positive quotes or pretending life is perfect. It's about being intentional, being aware that your attention is a limited resource, that your brain, your nervous system, your focus, they're built by what you give time to. You wouldn't drink dirty water and expect to feel healthy. So why fill your head with garbage and expect peace? Here's where it gets practical. Start paying attention, not just to what you watch or read, but how it makes you feel. Do you leave that scroll session feeling inspired or insecure? Does that podcast expand your thinking or stir up outrage? Does that conversation leave you energized or drained? These little signals matter because they tell you what kind of mental fuel you're running on. And if you want to upgrade your thinking, you've got to upgrade your input. This isn't about being a monk or cutting yourself off from the world. It's about curation, about treating your mind like a sacred space, not a landfill. You have more control than you think. You can mute, unfollow, unsubscribe. You can replace 1 hour of mindless content with 10 minutes of something that feeds you instead of numbs you. That one change, it compounds. Over time, it changes your mental landscape. Let's not pretend this is always easy. Junk content is addictive. Gossip is entertaining. Drama feels exciting for a moment, but it's like fast food for your brain. Feels good going down, makes you sluggish afterward. And just like with food, the more garbage you consume, the more you crave it. But once you start replacing it with something richer, real ideas, useful knowledge, meaningful insight, you begin to realize how starved your mind actually was. You deserve better, not in some lofty self-help kind of way, but in a very real, very grounded way. You deserve peace, focus, clarity. And those things don't just appear out of nowhere. They're the result of what you consume, what you repeat, what you give energy to every day. Think of it like this. If your life is a garden, your thoughts are the soil, and the content you consume, that's the seed. What you grow depends entirely on what you plant. So here's the challenge. Start being ruthless about your mental diet. Cut the junk, filter the noise. Seek out content that aligns with your values, not your impulses. And it doesn't have to be deep philosophy all the time. Even choosing silence over overstimulation is a win. Stillness is content too. Space is a form of nourishment. Next time you feel overwhelmed, unmotivated, or mentally scattered, don't just ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask, "What have I been feeding my mind?" Because you can't have peace if your attention is hijacked. You can't feel strong if you're constantly consuming things that make you feel small. You can't be clear if your inputs are chaotic. You are not just a product of your environment. You are a product of what you absorb from your environment. And the good news? You get to choose. One choice at a time. One book, one video, one scroll at a time. Choose wisely. Your future self is listening. 11th, motivation is a liar. You ever have one of those mornings where your alarm goes off and the first thought in your head is, "I don't feel like it today"? You tell yourself, "Just 5 more minutes," or "I'll start tomorrow." And somehow, that small decision turns into a whole day of drifting. Then one day becomes 2. Then a week passes, and suddenly that spark of change you felt fades into background noise. We've all been there, but here's the truth that stings a little. If you only move when you feel like it, you'll never go far. Waiting to feel ready is a luxury you can't afford if you want to grow. Motivation is nice when it shows up, like a good friend bringing coffee on a rough day, but it's not reliable. It comes and goes. Some days it's with you from sunrise, and other days it ghosts you without warning. If your progress depends on whether motivation feels like showing up, you're handing over your power. You're building your future on something shaky. But discipline, that's different. Discipline shows up even when you don't want to. It's the quiet voice that says, we're doing this anyway. The Stoics were big on this. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly." What he meant was, stop romanticizing the big leap, the perfect plan, the mood-struck inspiration. Great things, strong minds, fulfilled lives, meaningful change are built in small, consistent actions. Not in a flash of motivation, but in the repetition of discipline. It's not sexy, but it's real. It's brushing your teeth even when you're tired. It's writing that paragraph even when the words don't flow. It's showing up again and again no matter how you feel. We're all great at making promises to ourselves. I'm gonna start getting up early. I'll eat better. I'll finally work on that project. But those words mean nothing without action. And here's the part we don't talk about enough. The hardest steps, the ones taken when you're tired, unmotivated, uncertain, those are the ones that matter most. That's when identity shifts. That's when change starts to harden into something solid. Look at any person you admire, anyone who seems focused, grounded, in control of their life. You know what they all have in common? They don't rely on motivation. They rely on systems. They've built routines that keep moving forward, even when they don't feel like it. Whether it's a workout, a writing habit, a daily walk, or 10 minutes of silence in the morning, they've made it non-negotiable, like brushing teeth. No debate, no drama. Just do it. Life is your duty. Purpose is your work. You don't need to be inspired to show up. You need to remember why it matters. And when you treat your routines as sacred, not optional, you create a structure that holds you up even on the days when your emotions try to drag you down. Discipline doesn't mean rigidity. It doesn't mean never resting or pushing yourself to burnout. It means you've decided what matters, and you're committed to honoring that, regardless of how you feel in the moment. You know the days when it's hardest to show up are the days that count the most. That's where momentum is born, not in perfect conditions, but in messy, inconsistent ones. Anyone can work hard when they're motivated. What sets you apart is what you do when you're not. Think of momentum like pushing a boulder up a hill. The first few pushes are brutal. You question yourself. You feel the weight. You don't see results. But if you keep pushing, if you stay consistent, that weight starts to move. And once it rolls, it gets easier. That's how discipline works. Each time you show up, even a little, you're adding to that momentum. And eventually, it starts to work for you, not against you. You don't need to feel good to do good. Often, doing comes first. Action creates clarity. Movement generates energy. You don't wait to feel motivated. You act, and the motivation shows up after. So, what does this mean in practice? It means start small. Pick one thing that matters to you and make it part of your day. Rain or shine, tired or energized in the mood or not. It could be 5 minutes of writing, 10 push-ups, reading a page, making your bed, or turning your phone off for 1 hour. The task doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be real and repeatable. That's the key. Because when it becomes part of your rhythm, it stops depending on emotion and starts being a habit. Over time, these small acts of discipline become the foundation of something much bigger, self-respect. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a tiny one, you reinforce the belief that you are someone who follows through, that you can count on yourself. That's where real confidence comes from. Not hype, not affirmations, consistency. Seneca wrote, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." And preparation, that's built in the quiet moments. In the early mornings, the tired nights, the in-between hours when no one's watching and it would be so easy to skip. That's when you're building the version of you who's ready whenever opportunity arrives. So let's stop giving our power away to motivation. Let's stop waiting for a mood shift, for inspiration, for the right time. The right time is a myth. The perfect mood is a lie. And the life you want? It's waiting on the other side of one disciplined action, one small promise kept, one step, repeated over and over until the path becomes clear. Don't wait. Don't overthink. Just start. Even if it's messy, even if it's awkward, start before you feel ready. Because readiness isn't a feeling, it's a result. And it's earned through action, not anticipation. You don't need motivation to move. You need movement to generate motivation. So pick the smallest step. Do it today, and again, tomorrow. That's how you change your life. Not in a burst, but in a rhythm. Quiet, steady, unstoppable. 12. You don't need to control everything. Ever notice how exhausting it is to try and control everything? Every conversation, every outcome, every little variable that could go wrong. It's like juggling 1,000 spinning plates, hoping none of them fall, while still pretending you're calm. But deep down, you feel it. The weight, the tension, the quiet anxiety that comes from trying to hold the whole world in your hands. And here's the hard truth. You never really had that control in the first place. You just thought you did. That's the illusion. We think if we just plan a little harder, prepare a little more, anticipate every possible scenario, we can prevent discomfort, avoid pain, and guarantee results. But life doesn't play by those rules. It never has. And the Stoics knew that well. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." That's the anchor. That's the truth that, if you let it sink in, starts to change everything. The more you try to micromanage life, the more anxious you become. Why? Because you're spending your energy on things you don't actually control. How people respond to you, what someone thinks about you, whether something goes exactly the way you imagined. And when it doesn't, you feel like you've failed. Not because the outcome was wrong, but because you believed you had power over something you didn't. You ever try to control a relationship? Maybe you didn't call it that. Maybe you said you were just trying to fix it or keep the peace. But in reality, you were bending over backward, walking on eggshells, trying to manage someone else's behavior or feelings. And in doing that, you lost sight of yourself. You gave up your peace to try and keep theirs. And it never worked, did it? Because people don't change when we force them. They change when they choose to. This isn't passive. This isn't giving up. This is redirecting your energy to where it actually matters. Think about how much lighter your life could feel if you stopped trying to control the weather, literally and metaphorically, and started preparing yourself to walk through the storm with grace. You can't control if it rains, but you can control if you curse the sky or grab an umbrella. This idea extends to everything: work, health, plans. You can do all the right things, eat well, train hard, show up early, and still not get the outcome you hoped for. That's not failure, that's life. It's unpredictable, and the more you resist that, the more frustrated you become. But when you accept it, when you anchor yourself in what you can influence, your effort, your attitude, your boundaries, you begin to feel something different, not power over life, but peace within it. And maybe most importantly, you start trusting, not in fate, not in blind optimism, but in your ability to handle what comes. That's the foundation of Stoic strength. Not needing everything to go your way to be okay. Not needing to manage every variable to feel calm. Just knowing that whatever happens, you'll find your footing, you'll make your move, you'll adapt. So, what does this actually look like? It looks like letting the text go unanswered for now. Letting the traffic be traffic. Letting people misunderstand you if they must. It looks like focusing on what's right in front of you. Your breath, your words, your next choice. It looks like showing up fully in your lane, not swerving into someone else's. Control isn't peace, acceptance is. Peace doesn't come from everything going right. It comes from knowing you'll be okay even when things go wrong, from understanding where your responsibility ends and life begins. And once you really get that, you start to feel different, lighter, clearer, more grounded. So ask yourself, what am I trying to control that's not mine to carry? Where am I pouring energy into outcomes, opinions, or problems that don't actually belong to me? What would shift if I handed those things back to life and focused on what is mine, my mind, my choices, my presence? This is where real peace lives, not in the fantasy of control, but in the power of surrender. Not passive surrender, but powerful letting go. You don't need to chase certainty. You need to trust your capacity to respond, to adjust, to rise when life bends unexpectedly. The Stoics weren't emotionless, they weren't indifferent. They simply understood what was theirs and what wasn't, and they built their peace around that boundary. You can too. Start with the next breath, the next moment, the next choice to let go. Let life unfold, let people be, and trust that your lane, your thoughts, your actions, your values is enough to carry you forward. You don't need to control everything. You just need to show up with clarity where it counts. That's where your freedom begins, and it's been waiting for you all along. 13. You teach people how to treat you. There's a moment, quiet but powerful, when you realize that people don't treat you based on what's right or fair. They treat you based on what you allow. And that truth stings a little, because it forces you to stop blaming them and start looking inward. If someone keeps crossing a line, it's not just about their behavior anymore. It's about the boundary that hasn't been clearly drawn or hasn't been enforced. That's where real respect begins, not from others, but from you. It's a hard pill to swallow, especially when we're raised to believe that if we're kind, patient, or nice, people will naturally reciprocate. But life doesn't always work like that. People aren't mind readers, and sometimes, even when they are, they test limits to see if you'll stand your ground. And when you don't, that silence becomes permission, that hesitance becomes an invitation. So if you say you want respect but tolerate disrespect, you're sending mixed signals, not just to them, but to yourself. Boundaries are more than walls, they're declarations. They're how you teach the world to treat you, not through speeches or guilt trips, but through consistent action. You don't have to yell, you don't have to beg, you just have to be clear, firm, and consistent. And yes, that takes courage. It's not always easy to say, that doesn't work for me. It's uncomfortable to risk tension, to disrupt the peace. But here's the thing. If the only way to keep the peace is to sacrifice your own needs, it's not peace. It's quiet resentment. The Stoics were never interested in people-pleasing. They were interested in virtue, in living aligned with reason and integrity. Epictetus taught, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That's what setting boundaries is. It's not about convincing someone to treat you better. It's about living in a way that reflects your self-worth. That might mean walking away from a conversation, limiting time with someone who drains you, or simply saying no without a long explanation. Each act of boundary setting is a form of self-respect in motion. Think about someone in your life who respects you deeply. Chances are they also respect themselves, because that's the pattern. People who honor their own boundaries are better at honoring yours, but people who've been allowed to overstep, to manipulate, to take without consequence, they don't stop until they hit something solid. And if that solid has never been there, they just keep going. Not always maliciously, sometimes just habitually. You train people how to treat you by what you tolerate. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." Now imagine this. Every time you let a boundary slide, every time you avoid the hard conversation, you're telling your mind, "My needs aren't urgent, my space isn't important." And eventually that belief sinks in. You start shrinking to fit others' comfort. You second-guess your worth. And you call it humility, but it's really neglect. Setting a boundary doesn't make you mean. It makes you clear. You can be kind and still say, "This isn't okay." You can love someone and still not let them treat you any kind of way. That balance, firm and compassionate, is where emotional strength lives. And it's a practice. You won't get it perfect every time. You might fumble the words or second-guess yourself, but the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Like any muscle, it strengthens through use. There's this fear that setting boundaries will make people leave, and sometimes it will. But here's the flip side. The people who stay, they'll stay with a deeper respect for who you are. They'll understand that your time, energy, and presence aren't just freely available to anyone who demands them. And that understanding makes relationships stronger, not weaker, because clarity creates safety. When people know where the line is, everyone can relax. Seneca once wrote, "No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have, and to cheerfully put to good use what they do have." You might not be able to make someone treat you better, but you can control how long you give them access to you. You can control whether you stay in environments that deplete you. That choice is always yours, and when you start choosing differently, your whole life starts to shift. So here's the real question. Where are you allowing what you don't actually accept? Where are you staying silent when your soul is shouting for space? Where have you convinced yourself that tolerance is strength, when really it's fear dressed up as diplomacy? You're not here to be a doormat. You're not here to constantly explain your worth to people who don't see it. You're here to live with integrity, to show up as someone who values their time, their energy, their peace. Not just in theory, but in practice. Boundaries aren't punishments, they're filters. They don't push people away. They reveal who's willing to respect your values. And when you live that way, you attract people who do the same. People who don't flinch when you say no. People who don't need you to break yourself into pieces just to make them whole. You can't teach respect with words alone. You teach it with action, with follow-through, with consequences, with a clear, unwavering standard that says, "This is what I expect, and this is what I will no longer allow." Set the tone, walk the talk, and remember, respect starts with you. When you honor yourself, you raise the standard for everyone else. And that shift? That's how you reclaim your life, one boundary at a time. 14. Advice reflects the giver, not always the truth. You ever notice how quick people are to offer advice, especially when you didn't ask for it? It could be about your job, your relationship, your goals, your lifestyle. Everyone's got something to say, and it usually comes packaged with, "I'm just trying to help," or "if I were you." But here's the thing, they're not you. They don't live in your skin. They don't carry your experiences, your values, your dreams. So while they may mean well, not every opinion deserves to land inside your mind. This is where so many people get lost. They start living according to borrowed voices, adjusting their life to match the expectations, judgments, or fears of others. It might be subtle at first. You tweak your choices to avoid criticism. You start questioning your instincts because someone made you feel like you were wrong. Before you know it, you're on a path that feels more like a performance than a purpose. And what's worse, you don't even know where the original you went. People don't just give advice based on logic. They give advice based on fear, ego, old wounds, and personal failures. What they're really saying is, this is what I would do because I'm scared of what happened last time, or this is what I couldn't do, and maybe you shouldn't either. It's not always malicious, but it's rarely neutral. The Stoics warned about this too. Epictetus said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." Translation: don't dress your life in someone else's fabric. Get clear on who you are, your values, your priorities, your vision, before you start letting people dress your decisions with their advice. That's not pride, that's self-respect. This doesn't mean you shut everyone out or act like you know everything. Wisdom loves learning, but wisdom also knows how to filter. You don't have to accept every opinion handed to you just because it's offered with conviction. Sometimes the loudest advice comes from the most confused people. You can listen without absorbing, hear without obeying. And let's talk about credentials. Just because someone's older, successful, or louder doesn't mean they know what's best for you. Life isn't one size fits all. What worked for them might be the exact thing that would crush your spirit. Maybe their version of success doesn't align with your definition of fulfillment. That's okay. You're allowed to walk your own path, even if others don't get it, especially if they don't get it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." I'd add this: if it is not yours, don't live it. You're not obligated to carry advice that doesn't resonate with your soul, and the more you practice checking in with you, the stronger your filter becomes. You'll start to feel it in your gut, what feels right, what feels off. That's intuition, that's inner clarity, and it gets sharper the more you use it. Here's a useful trick when receiving advice. Ask yourself, is this coming from love or fear? Expansion or limitation? Does it challenge you in a healthy way, or does it try to box you in? You'll be surprised how often people dress fear up as caution and call it just being realistic. But realism that kills dreams isn't realism, it's projection. Sometimes the best growth comes when you don't follow the crowd, when you trust that quiet voice inside that says, "I know it's different, but this is what feels true to me." You'll face pushback. People will question you, criticize you, maybe even guilt you. But here's what they don't realize. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your job is not to make everyone else feel comfortable with your life. Your job is to live with alignment, to make choices that honor your values, your integrity, your vision. That's not selfish, that's sovereignty. So how do you start doing that? Step 1. Build self-awareness. Know your values, like you know your name. Write them down, revisit them often. If advice contradicts those values, it's not for you. Step 2. Ask yourself, does this advice bring me closer to who I want to be or further away? If it pushes you toward growth, it's worth considering. If it pulls you into fear or guilt, it's time to let it go. You're allowed to say thank you and still not follow the advice. You're allowed to smile and move on. You're allowed to filter feedback based on its quality, not its volume, because in the end, you are the one who has to live with the consequences of your choices, not them, you. So stop living for applause. Stop shrinking to fit someone else's comfort zone. Stop twisting yourself into knots to avoid criticism. The people who matter will respect your choices, even if they don't fully understand them. And the ones who don't, they were never meant to hold space in your future. Let this be your reminder. Your life is not a group project, it's a solo journey. And while wise counsel is valuable, the final decision always belongs to you. Filter the noise, trust your gut, stay rooted in what's real for you. Because you don't need everyone's approval to live your truth, you just need your own. 15. Overthinking is just delayed action. You ever catch yourself overthinking something so much that it actually makes you more confused than when you started? You run through every possible outcome, every worst-case scenario, every what if. You think you're being careful, strategic, maybe even smart. But deep down, you're just stuck. Not because you don't know enough, but because you're scared to make a move. And that fear, it's wearing a mask. It looks like planning, but really, it's avoidance. The truth is, a lot of us confuse analyzing with preparing. We say things like, I just need a little more time, or I'm still weighing my options. But if we're honest, most of the time we're not collecting new information. We're recycling the same doubts in a different order. It's like being on a treadmill and thinking you're on a journey. You're moving, sure, but you're not going anywhere. Stop spinning in thought. Be about it. Don't just sit around imagining the perfect move. Make a move. Why? Because motion, not thought, creates momentum. You can't think your way into a new life. You have to act your way into it. Clarity isn't something you stumble on after thinking long enough. It's something you earn through experience, through trial, through motion. Every step forward gives you more data than 1,000 hypotheticals ever could. Think about it like this. You can't steer a parked car. The wheel might turn, but the car's going nowhere. It's only once you start moving, even if it's slow, even if it's not the perfect direction, that you can actually adjust. But staying still, that just feeds your doubt. The longer you sit in indecision, the louder your fears get. And the louder they get, the harder it is to remember why you wanted to move in the first place. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That's what overthinking is, a self-inflicted suffering. Most of the things we fear don't even happen. But we live through them anyway, over and over in our heads. We imagine failure, rejection, embarrassment, so we play it safe. We wait, we delay, and life quietly passes by. But here's the shift. What if you saw action not as a risk, but as a tool? A way to test what's real instead of fearing what might be? What if instead of saying, "What if it goes wrong?" you said, "Let's find out what happens when I try"? That's not recklessness, that's wisdom in motion. Because the truth is, you can't think your way into certainty. Life isn't a chessboard where all the pieces stay where you left them. It's fluid, dynamic, unpredictable, and that's not a flaw, it's the point. Here's something else. When you stay in your head too long, you start creating problems that don't exist. You start doubting people's intentions, questioning your own abilities. You write whole stories based on fear, not fact, and that mental noise drowns out your instincts. You stop trusting your gut because your brain's too loud. But your gut, your inner compass, it's wiser than you think. It doesn't need a spreadsheet. It needs space, and action clears that space. Every step you take, especially the imperfect ones, teaches you something new. Maybe that the path needs adjusting. Maybe that the fear wasn't real. Maybe that you're more capable than you believed. But you only get that insight after you move, not before. The Stoics believed that virtue, your character, your growth, comes from how you engage with life, not how much you think about it. You want to be brave. Take a brave step. You want to be decisive. Make a decision. You want to be confident. Do the thing scared and keep doing it until your courage catches up. This isn't about rushing blindly. It's about stopping the paralysis. It's about recognizing when your thoughts have become a hiding place. It's okay to think things through. It's healthy to reflect. But when reflection turns into avoidance, it stops serving you. That's the line you have to watch. So here's the challenge. Whatever you've been thinking about, circling around, postponing, pick one step and do it. Today, not next week, not when the stars align. Now, And don't worry about whether it's perfect. Worry about whether it's real. You can course correct later. You can adjust your speed, your direction. But you can't build momentum if you never leave the start line. You are not stuck because you don't have enough information. You're stuck because you haven't made a move. The truth? Action isn't the end of overthinking. It's the antidote to it. It interrupts the loop. It snaps you out of the fog. It puts you back in the driver's seat. 16. You can't heal in the same place you were hurt. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting to stay. It's choosing to leave, not out of fear, not out of weakness, but out of self-respect. Because no matter how strong you are, if you keep planting yourself in the same soil that keeps poisoning your roots, you can't thrive. And yet, we convince ourselves that staying put is noble, that loyalty means endurance, even when it's costing us peace, clarity, and our sense of self. But at some point you have to ask, am I healing here, or am I just surviving? We've been told over and over that time heals all wounds, but that's not the full story. Time alone doesn't heal. Time just passes. It's what you do with that time and where you spend it that shapes your growth. A toxic environment can keep your nervous system on edge. It can keep reopening emotional wounds, no matter how many times you patch them up. Healing, real healing, isn't just about clocking days. It's about creating the conditions that allow your heart and mind to breathe again. Sometimes the environment that shaped you isn't the one that can sustain you. That means leaving. That means letting go of the people, the places, the habits, even the identities that are wrapped in the trauma you're trying to rise from. It doesn't make you cold. It makes you conscious. The Stoics had no illusions about the influence of the external world. Epictetus taught, the key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. That means choosing your space deliberately, because space isn't neutral, it shapes you. The conversations you're surrounded by, the energy that fills the room, the expectations that silently pull at your behavior. If you're constantly in survival mode, walking on eggshells, suppressing your voice, shrinking to fit, you're not healing, you're hardening. And hardening isn't healing. Healing is soft. It's the slow unfolding of a clenched spirit. But that can't happen if you're constantly triggered, constantly re-traumatized, constantly forced to armor up. You need space, literal space, mental space, emotional space. And that sometimes means stepping out of the familiar, even when the familiar feels like home. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. But sometimes, the thing that stands in the way is the very room you're sitting in. The environment isn't always just a challenge, it can be a cage. And no amount of self-discipline can override the fact that some places simply don't allow you to expand. You can be doing all the inner work, reading, journaling, meditating, but if your outer world is hostile, your growth will always hit a ceiling. So what does it look like to leave with intention? It doesn't mean ghosting people or running from your problems. It means consciously choosing to remove yourself from environments that constantly drain you, disrespect you, or distort you. It means creating distance not because you're angry, but because you're finally aligned with your worth. You stop negotiating your value just to be accepted by people who haven't earned access to you. It's the job that numbs you, the town that boxes you in, the circle that keeps pulling you back to an outdated version of yourself. Growth will always ask you to walk away from something, and the longer you resist, the longer you postpone the peace you're craving. Let's be clear, it's okay to outgrow things. It's not betrayal. It's biology. It's the nature of life. Flowers don't apologize for growing taller than the weeds beside them. They just reach for the sun. you have that same right to grow, to stretch, to rise. And yes, that might mean some people fall away. That might mean stepping into the unknown, but that's the cost of transformation, and it's worth it. Staying in a harmful environment often becomes unconscious. We normalize dysfunction. We confuse chaos with connection. But when you bring awareness to it, when you realize this place is hurting me more than it's helping me, you reclaim your agency. You stop calling it fate and start calling it a decision. You're not weak for leaving. You're strong for knowing what's no longer serving your evolution. It takes guts to walk away from what's familiar, especially when everyone around you says to just push through. But pushing through isn't always noble. It can be damaging. Sometimes the wisest move is to pause, breathe, and relocate, not just physically, but spiritually. Think of healing like a wound. If you keep bumping it against the same table every day, it won't close. But give it space, cover it, protect it, give it air and time, and it starts to mend. You're no different. If your inner wound keeps reopening, check the room you're in. Check the energy, the relationships, the rhythms. Are they helping you or harming you? This isn't about blaming others. It's about choosing yourself. Stoicism teaches responsibility, not victimhood. You don't control everything, but you do control where you place your roots. Choose environments that nourish you, that challenge you in healthy ways, that remind you of your strength without demanding your suffering. Because here's the truth, healing isn't just about letting go of the past. It's about choosing a future that supports your wholeness. And that future starts with space, with the courage to say, this is no longer the place for me. With the clarity to know that leaving isn't failure, it's wisdom. So if you've been feeling stuck, heavy, or constantly triggered, ask yourself, is it really me? Or is it the environment I'm trying to grow in? And if the answer is the environment, give yourself permission to move, to breathe, to step into a space that matches your healing. You're not running, you're rising. And that, my friend, is the beginning of becoming whole. 17. Your attention shapes your identity. Ever notice how your mood shifts depending on what you've been feeding your mind? 1 minute you're feeling okay, and then suddenly, after scrolling through drama-filled headlines or hearing someone complain non-stop, you're anxious, irritable, drained. It's not random. It's not a coincidence. It's your attention quietly reshaping your inner world. Because what you focus on isn't just something you observe, it's something you absorb. And over time, it becomes the filter through which you see everything. That's the thing most people don't realize. Attention is power. It's not just where your eyes go, it's where your energy flows. Whatever you consistently pay attention to, you give life to. You plant it in the soil of your mind and let it grow. Focus on fear. Fear gets louder. Focus on drama. Suddenly peace feels miles away. Focus on purpose, discipline, things that stretch and refine you. That's when things begin to shift. You don't just feel better, you become better. If your daily life is filled with constant negativity, whether it's the news, toxic conversations, or just your own inner critic, you start seeing the world as dark, chaotic, hopeless. It leaks into how you speak, how you act, how you treat others, how you treat yourself. Not because life is always that bleak, but because your focus painted it that way. This isn't about toxic positivity. Life is hard. Things go wrong. People hurt you. You're allowed to feel that. You're allowed to sit with your pain. But there's a difference between feeling it and feeding it. Between processing something and obsessing over it. Between awareness and fixation. If you focus too long on what's broken, you miss the tools in your hand to rebuild. Carl Jung once wrote, Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. That awareness of where your attention goes, that's the beginning of awakening. It's realizing that most of what stresses us out doesn't live in the world. It lives in our minds. And that's empowering, not discouraging, because it means the shift doesn't require a lottery win or some miracle event. It just requires attention, intentional attention. Let's say your attention is like a flashlight. In a dark room, you can point it at a pile of trash or a beautiful painting. Same room, totally different experience. The room didn't change, your focus did. Same with your life. If you're constantly zooming in on the worst parts, the gaps, the noise, then yeah, your reality is going to feel heavy. But if you train yourself to start focusing on growth, effort, values, and gratitude, the room doesn't feel so suffocating anymore. It starts to open up. The Stoics understood this deeply. Your focus is that reaction. It's your first step in choosing how you engage with what life throws your way. Will you dwell on what's out of your control, or will you shift your attention to what is? Your choices, your character, your habits? Let's talk practically. If your mornings start with doom scrolling through bad news or comparing your life to everyone else's highlight reel, your mental energy is already hijacked. But imagine starting your day with stillness, with intention, with reading something meaningful, journaling for 5 minutes, reflecting on one core value you want to live by. Doesn't have to be grand, just deliberate. Those small adjustments in where your attention goes, they change how you show up, not just for the day, but for your entire life. Your brain has a filter called the reticular activating system. It sifts through the millions of bits of data around you and highlights only what you've told it matters. Start constantly focusing on failure. Your brain will filter in more signs that you're failing. Start focusing on growth. Suddenly you'll see possibilities you couldn't before. Same world, different filter. So let me ask you this. What are you feeding your focus? Who are you listening to every day? What content do you keep coming back to? What thoughts do you rehearse in your head over and over again? Because repetition is how we shape identity. Not some big dramatic moment, but the small, consistent stuff you do and dwell on every day. Here's the beautiful part. Your focus is a choice. It might not feel like it at first, especially if you've been running on autopilot. But the moment you pause and ask, is this helping me become who I want to be? You begin taking back control. You step out of reaction and into direction. And from there, everything becomes more intentional. Marcus Aurelius also wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." He didn't mean ignore reality. He meant take responsibility for the one thing no one can ever take from you, your attention. Guard it, redirect it, strengthen it. The world will always fight for your focus. Advertisers, social media, loud opinions, fears. But you have the power to say, no. This moment belongs to me. You have the power to decide what gets your mental energy and what doesn't. And when you do, you start to change, not just how you think, but how you live. You become more grounded, more clear, more focused, not because life got easier, but because you got sharper, more deliberate, more aligned with who you truly want to be. 18. Confidence comes from doing, not feeling. Confidence is one of those things everyone wants, but most people misunderstand. We think it's a personality trait, something you're either born with or you're not. We imagine confident people as the ones who just walk into a room glowing, completely sure of themselves like they've always been that way. But here's the truth, nobody starts that way. Confidence doesn't magically appear before action. It's the reward you get after you show up. after you do the hard things, after you keep your promises to yourself. You don't wait for confidence, you build it, one action at a time. This is where so many of us get stuck. We think, I'll go for it when I feel ready, or I'll start once I feel more sure of myself. But you know what? That moment of perfect readiness, it almost never comes. And if you keep waiting for it, you'll stay stuck. It's not that you're not good enough or capable, it's that you're asking the wrong question. Don't ask, how can I feel more confident before I start? Ask, what small step can I take now, even if I'm unsure? Because it's in the doing, not the daydreaming, that confidence begins to take root. Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" He didn't say wait for the stars to align or for your self-esteem to hit 100%. He said, demand it. That's the mindset shift. You stop asking for permission from your feelings and start leading with your values. And one of those values has to be this: I move, even when I don't feel like it, even when it's scary, even when the voice in my head tells me I'm not ready. If you're always telling yourself you're going to be more confident, more disciplined, more courageous, but you're not backing it up with action, you're reinforcing the opposite identity. Every time you hesitate, every time you break your own word, you teach your brain, I can't count on myself. But every time you do the thing, whether it's sending the email, speaking up in the meeting, going to the gym, you send a different message. I show up. That's where real confidence is born. Confidence is built in quiet moments, not loud ones. It's built on the days when you really don't feel like it, but you do it anyway. It's built when you feel awkward, unsure, out of your depth, but you lean in instead of pulling back. Every one of those moments is like laying a brick. One rep at a time. It's not flashy, but it's solid. And over time, those bricks turn into a foundation you can stand on. Think about athletes, artists, or entrepreneurs you admire. Do you think they always felt confident before they acted? Number. They acted through the doubt. They practiced when no one was watching. They kept going when things felt pointless. The Stoics would call this arete, the pursuit of excellence through consistent action, not fleeting emotions. So, if you've been sitting around waiting to feel ready, let this be your wake-up call. Confidence isn't going to walk in and tap you on the shoulder. It's something you create through repetition, through momentum, through the little daily choices that seem small in the moment, but compound into something massive over time. Think of it like a muscle. If you never use it, it doesn't grow. But the more you train it, even imperfectly, the stronger it gets. And here's the thing, confidence doesn't mean you never doubt yourself. It doesn't mean the fear disappears. It means you learn to act with the fear. You feel it and you move anyway. That's what builds self-trust. Because confidence isn't the absence of fear. It's the belief that you can handle whatever comes, even if you're scared. And the only way to believe that is to prove it to yourself over and over again. You don't wait to feel brave. You act brave, and the feeling follows. You do the thing that scares you, and your nervous system eventually adapts. You expand what you're capable of, not through theory, but through sweat. Let's break this down into something real. Let's say you want to become more confident at public speaking. You can read every book, watch every video, take every note. But until you stand up and speak, you'll never build that muscle. You might shake the first time, stumble the second, but by the third or fourth round, something shifts. Not because you magically became confident, but because you earned it. Same goes for fitness, relationships, creative work, anything. Confidence doesn't come first. Reps come first. That's what makes confidence so empowering. You don't have to wait for it to arrive. You just have to start moving right here, right now. But here's a twist. The reps don't need to be perfect. In fact, they won't be. That's part of the process. You'll mess up, you'll feel silly, but every time you show up again, you reinforce a powerful truth. I don't give up on me. And that's the deepest form of confidence, not swagger, not bravado, but quiet, grounded self-trust. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And so many of us waste time waiting to feel ready, waiting for the fear to go away, waiting for someone to tell us we're good enough. But what if you stopped waiting? What if you started building? What if today you just decided to do one small thing that moves you forward? That's how it begins. One rep at a time, one choice at a time. You act, you follow through, you build self-trust. And slowly, quietly, that voice inside your head starts to change. It stops saying, "I can't." It starts saying, "I've done this before, I can do it again." Confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. So stop waiting. Start doing. Show up for yourself. Not once, but again and again. Because every time you act, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. And when those votes add up, that's when you walk into the room and realize you're no longer pretending to be confident. 19. People remember how you made them feel. You ever think about the people who made the biggest impact on your life, like the ones who actually shifted something inside you? I bet it's not what they said that stuck. It's how they made you feel. Maybe they didn't have the perfect words, the best advice, or the most impressive background. But when you were around them, something felt different. Maybe it was calm, maybe it was love, maybe it was honesty. Whatever it was, it stayed with you long after they left the room. That's the thing about presence. It speaks louder than words ever could. In today's world, we're so obsessed with being impressive, with saying the right thing, posting the right thing, presenting ourselves in the most curated, filtered way possible. But here's a harsh truth most people miss. No one remembers your highlight reel. What they remember is how they felt in your presence. Were you genuine? Were you kind? Did you make them feel heard even when they weren't saying much? That's what lasts. The energy you bring into a room outlives anything clever you might say in it. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." That's the power of presence. It's not neutral. It changes things, even if just subtly. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to be perfect to leave a mark. You just need to be there, open, grounded, human. The truth is, people don't remember exact phrases. They remember tone. They remember energy. They remember whether you made them feel small or safe, whether you listened or just waited to talk, whether you were judging or actually trying to understand. We all crave something real, something that reminds us we matter. So if you want to be influential, start there. Start by seeing people, really seeing them. Epictetus taught that we should be tolerant with others and strict with ourselves. That means we don't need to walk into a room trying to dominate. We walk in anchored in who we are, and we extend grace to everyone else. Real strength isn't about overpowering someone with our words. It's about making space for empathy, for authenticity, for connection. Now, don't get me wrong, words matter, but only when they're backed by something solid. If your vibe is off, if you're clearly distracted, insincere, or fake kind, people pick up on that. Energy doesn't lie. You can't fake presence. Either you're with someone fully or you're not. And in a world where most people are only half listening, just being fully there is rare enough to be revolutionary. Here's where this ties into the Stoic idea of virtue. Stoicism teaches us to lead with values, not ego, not status, not cleverness. Values. Things like courage, humility, and kindness. That's how you build real influence. Not through flash, but through consistency. Through how you treat people when no one's watching. Through how you show up, even when it's inconvenient. Through the way you handle someone else's vulnerability with gentleness instead of judgment. Think about it. You can scroll through social media and see hundreds of influencers. But how many actually influence your heart? How many shift your mindset, not just for a minute, but in a lasting way? Not many, because true influence doesn't come from attention, it comes from alignment. When someone is aligned with their values, when their inner world is calm and rooted, it comes across in everything they do. You feel it. And that's rare. That's magnetic. Seneca said, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." That might sound simple, but it's not small. Kindness isn't weak. It's transformative. It disarms people. It makes them breathe easier. It makes them feel seen. And in a world where everyone's fighting to be seen themselves, being the one who sees others, that's real power. That's legacy. People are hurting more than they let on. They're carrying stress, doubt, insecurity, and grief in silence. And you don't always need to fix it. You don't need a grand speech. Sometimes you just need to be the calm in the chaos, the stillness in the noise, the one person who's not trying to impress them, but just to understand them. Let's be honest, that takes work. Emotional work, inner work. You can't give people presents if you've never learned how to sit with your own discomfort. You can't offer safety to others if you're still judging your own humanity. That's why this isn't just about how you treat others. It's about who you're becoming. It starts with you, with showing up for yourself without judgment, with being honest about your flaws, your triggers, your wounds. Because when you make peace with your own humanness, you start showing up for others with way more grace. Confidence, as we talked about before, doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being grounded, from knowing you're trying your best to be real in a world full of masks. And people feel that. They trust it. They're drawn to it. So if you're serious about wanting to make an impact, stop trying to impress. Start trying to connect. You don't need the perfect words. You need presence. You need kindness. You need to be real. That's what people crave. That's what they remember. Not the mic drop moments, but the silent ones. The moments when they felt safe, heard, valued. Carl Jung also said, "Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul." That's it. That's the whole thing. Influence isn't about towering above others. It's about meeting them where they are, fully present, fully human. 20. Live for who you're becoming. Sometimes it starts with something small. You snooze the alarm, skip the workout, brush off that tough conversation, and suddenly you realize you've cast a vote, not for tomorrow's success, but for today's comfort. And while comfort feels good in the moment, the truth is, each little choice is stacking up, building the person you will become. Every time you opt out, you're reinforcing the version of you that avoids discomfort. And that person might be fine for today, but is not the one you'll thank a year from now. Imagine viewing each decision as a ballot. Your future self is watching, and your future self votes based on what you do now. Think of it like investing. You don't invest in the stock market expecting immediate returns. You invest expecting growth over time. You trust the process. The same applies to your life. That choice to show up, one small rep, one honest boundary, one courageous conversation, doesn't explode your life overnight, but it compounds, just as interest does. And the future you? They'll look back and feel grateful for the consistency, not the sprints. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." I'd add, Quality of your thoughts is shaped by quality of your choices. What you decide today is a declaration of what kind of person you plan to be. Sure, skipping today might feel good, but tomorrow might bring regret, a niggle of doubt. What if I had tried? But if you show up now, even when you really don't feel like it, that vote is cast in favor of someone who tries, someone who keeps commitments, someone who trusts themselves, and that someone is much easier to live with and much easier to become. Carl Jung said, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it." Those tiny choices matter because they carry meaning. It might be just one workout, one steady meal, one boundary enforced, but together they define your identity. Your daily votes create the life you live, one moment at a time. And your identity is not some abstract ideal. It's the habits you build, the values you live. It's what you do, not what you say, what you vote for with your choices. Now, the Stoics had a powerful concept, amor fati. It means love of your fate, embracing choices that align you with virtue, regardless of external rewards. Start by choosing who you want to become. Then vote accordingly, one everyday action at a time, even when it's hard. Because someone who wants to lose weight but skips the workout isn't actually a person who values health. They're a person who values comfort. Through choices, you define who you are. Skipping that workout today, you're voting for a weaker self tomorrow. Avoiding that boundary conversation, you're voting for a life where your needs don't matter. But showing up, that's a vote for respect, for resilience, for a stronger you. It's adjusting the compass in your soul. And when you adjust often, even by small margins, the path shifts over time. The person you're becoming shifts with it. And here's another truth. Your future self isn't distant. They already exist as a possibility inside you. They're whispering their story through your actions today. So when you choose to walk away from something easy and choose what grows you instead, you're casting a vote for that future self. You're saying, yes, I trust you. I believe in the direction you're going. Imagine the gratitude they'll feel when they wake up one day and realize how far you've walked together. Our greatest ally in building a meaningful future is our ability to choose one action over another. You don't need overwhelming inspiration to vote. You just need the next right action. And each time you choose the harder one, whether it's a discipline, a boundary, a conversation, you're building a legacy of self-trust. That's the soil in which purpose grows. What if you thought in terms of decades, not days? What if every morning you asked, what choice can I make today that my future self will appreciate? Not tomorrow, not next week, today. And even if that choice seems small, like sending an email, hitting publish, putting down the phone, it's a seed. Over time, the garden grows. The habits deepen, identity shifts. The votes add up until suddenly, you're living a life that shows what you stand for. A life you don't just survive, you thrive in it. The Stoics emphasized living according to nature, meaning living in alignment with your highest values and reason. Marcus Aurelius reminds himself to live in agreement with nature, because when your choices are aligned, your life flows. When they're scattered, your energy fragments. The person you become is not random, it's deliberate. So here's the moment. Look around your day. See the moments waiting for you to cast your ballot. The workout you can do, the apology you can give, the project you can start, the boundary you can hold, not because of guilt, but because of growth. That's how you honor your future. That's how you become the person you admire. Small votes add up. We don't see the shift immediately, but you will. The future you is counting on today's vote. Will you skip out, or will you stand up? It's not about radical change overnight. It's about radical consistency over time, one vote at a time. With each choice, you define your direction. You declare who you will be. That's the long game. And it starts now. Every moment is a decision. Every decision is a vote. And every vote is shaping the person you're becoming. So don't wait for change. Choose it, quietly, daily, relentlessly. Because your future isn't something you find. It's something you build. If this spoke to something in you, there's more where that came from. Check out the next video waiting for you on screen. It's time to keep walking this path of purpose, one step at a time. And as always, thank you for being part of Stoic Journal. Stay grounded, stay growing,